I have no idea if I started this yet. So, I'm trying some new things out. If anyone's in the chat and you can hear this, please let me know. I am using a new microphone. You can hear me. Check that out. All right, cool. How well can you hear me? Does it sound better? I hope it sounds better. Okay, apparently people can hear me. I'm going to make a couple of adjustments on the microphone real quick, and I could use your help. So, tell me if it sounds better when I switch it to this other setting over here. All right, how does it sound now? Does it sound better, or does the other way sound better? And I know it takes about 30 seconds to reach everybody. So I'll wait. Once we have the volume down, we're going to jump right into talking about, somebody said it sounds worse. So let me try this one. Let me know if this one sounds any better. Probably not. Let's go ahead and put it on what we have. Okay, we're back to original. The first one. Okay, so everyone says this one sounds better. This is what I'm going to do. Hopefully there's no clipping or anything, and hopefully everybody can hear me great. Now let's talk about the Titans. All right, now first I want to make a couple of things clear. Actually, I really want to make one thing very clear. This whole segment, this live stream, is going to be dedicated to talking about Titans, not giants. When I talk about Titans, I'm talking about guys like you see here in the picture, the size of mountains. I'm talking about the gods of the gods, the fathers of the giants. All right, I'm not talking about, in our society, unfortunately, when we say Titan or Titanic, everything has shrunken down, even in our concept. So now we think about, beings that are like 12, 15, even 20 feet tall. I am not talking about those sized beings. I am talking about humongous skyscraper, Godzilla, King Kong sized beings. First, I want to thank everybody for showing up. Everyone who is a new subscriber, welcome. I hope you get something out of my channel. I'm not here to argue or to tell people I'm right. I'm just here to think outside of the box, put all the little puzzle pieces together, and try to make more sense out of this crazy, boring world that we live in. Because, let's face it, the myths and the lore and the legends and what we call fairy tales are so much more exciting. And the possibility of them being real tends to make my life all that much more exciting when I live and I do my day-to-day things that I do. So let's get right into it. Titans. We're not talking about giants. We're talking about guys like King Kong over here. Now, Titans were, today, they're myth. They're what we call myth, right? They're non-existent, and they never were existent. When we're presented Titans today, we're presented as if they are fantasy creatures, as if they are cartoons or not existence, or stories just made up to amuse people. I disagree with that strongly, and the further down this rabbit hole I go, and the more research I do, and the more I put these puzzle pieces together, and I follow that trail of breadcrumbs, the more I see the reality and the evidence for things like the Titans having once existed and maybe still existing. So this, while today it's not common knowledge, today it's painted as fantasy and lies, basically, right? That's really what we mean when we say fantasy. We mean lies, okay? It used to be the concept of titanic beings, the size of skyscrapers and mountains, was once common knowledge. It was accepted. It was the way that the world was. As a matter of fact, there are so many things that were once such common knowledge that there was no need for us or for our predecessors to write about them in great detail, because in their minds, who would have thought that these things that were once so prevalent and ruled over the world would ever disappear? Who would have had the foresight to think, I should probably go into great detail describing these massive beings that everyone knows about? No, not at all. They may casually reference them or mention them or include them in their legends and their stories and their histories, but there was really no need to go into great detail to teach future generations as if they were children and had no idea what we were talking about or what the ancients were talking about. It would be much like if I were to write a book today and I casually mentioned a car, an automobile, right? I don't have the foresight to think, I do have the foresight to think this, but most people would not have the foresight to think, there may be a huge cataclysm one day and people might not know what automobiles are. So I should probably take a minute out of my writing to go into detail, letting people know what it is exactly that I'm talking about. Or letting them know that this is not a metaphor for something that's happening in my life, where my life is just getting quicker and quicker. No, this was a real actual thing that existed called a car, or velomotor, or automobile, or whatever you'd like to call it. So just like that, things like what we call giants or the Titan race of beings, there was no need to go into the semantics of describing who they were and where they came from, except for a few small writings that have been found in recent times, but dismissed as pseudo writings or pseudopigrapha or false writings or stories or myths or legends or tales which are not true by today's standards. So the ancients knew of the Titans. The ancients coexisted and wrote and experienced the Titans, especially the further back you go. And this was a reality. This was not a fairy tale as of yet. This was their day-to-day life. These were the massive beings that deserved or demanded or earned the respect of the smaller beings, right? These are what we would call gods today. Now, I'm not talking about the concept of a god, an omnipresent being, an eternal energy. I'm talking about individual massive beings that our world records all describe and have left behind in our legends and our scriptures and stories and writings and whatnot. So, how did we get from the Titans of old, the titanic beings, the size of skyscrapers and mountains, being common knowledge and accepted, to disbelief that we have today? How did it go from reality to fiction? How did it go from knowledge and experience to disbelief and forgetting and laughing at something and dismissing the subject and having it not even being talked about? Can you imagine those implications? If this is real, if the concept and the subject of titanic beings walking our land and all of those wonderful stories that comes along with that, if that's true, why are we not talking about it? Why is that not permeating our everyday existence? Why are there not plans in place in our daily lives as to what we should do if they return, or where did they go, or what had happened? This is all a part, in my understanding, of an ancient oblivion, of legends that have been destroyed, of history that has been burned, of information that has been deleted and eradicated from our world record across this plane of existence and across the realm and across time. We have forgotten the Titans. Now, I believe it's still there in our collective subconscious, and that's why we see it permeate throughout so many myths and legends and movies and comic books and regular books and whatnot. You will see it. And I think that this particular subject will explode here very soon, if it hasn't already. I think that the Titans are going to make their way to the forefront of our mind, just like so many other subjects during this little period of time that people are dubbing the Awakening, right? Now, don't get the Awakening confused with the Age of Enlightenment or the Age of Reason that we have been taught in schools. Those were false concepts, okay? The Age of Enlightenment, the Age of Reason that we are taught is no kind of enlightenment at all, okay? We are actually coming into a period where people do not need to be taught these things. We're just picking them out of the air. Like, these things are just falling into our laps. All of these subjects of titanic beings or a plane of existence or gigantic trees that reached up into the heavens, the Silica age, elves, gods, all of these things. People are coming to realize these things all on their own without having to fall into some YouTube channel or without having to be told or without people going up to their doors and knocking and insisting, "Can we tell you about the Titans? We'd like to speak to you about the good news of the Titans," and all these other wonderful subjects. But I digress. If you're just joining me, I do want to tell you that I think I actually scheduled 2 live streams. So hopefully you catch this one, because I think I messed up on the time zone for the other one. I'm still figuring some of these things out. I hope you can see the layout. I hope it, looks somewhat cool. I'm still working on this, and one of my good friends is actually going to help me to piece something together that's probably a little, more visually easier on the eyes. But I have put up many pictures over here, you'll see, and I might even put up a little movie later on. I don't know how many people have seen the commercial of the Titan that was a mountain where it comes alive. I think it was a commercial from Spain or maybe Madrid or maybe somewhere in South America. But let's move on. The Titans were once real. The Titans were once immediate knowledge and fact. They have gone away. And because they have gone away, generation and generation and generation of men and what I call babies, because we live such short lifespans, we have all but forgotten these Titans. Now, this concept of forgetting something after cataclysm, especially due to our short lifespans, is something that I'll be touching on. But let's talk about the evidence that we have with us today. It's not like the Titans and this mega race of gigantic beings just existed and left no trace behind. They're gone now, and that's one of the reasons, just one, that we have forgotten about their existence, that we have forgotten about the role they played in shaping our world and delivering us to the time period in which we find ourselves today. Oh no, they have left behind evidence. Now, it's going to take a mind that is open and willing to look for the evidence in order to see it. Because sometimes things that are evident can be right in front of us, but we don't recognize it. Actually, I'm reading this book here by Immanuel Velikovsky, and it's called Mankind in Amnesia. And I want to read you a quick little part here in this book because it's relevant to what I'm talking about. Just bear with me. I'll be right with you. Oh, here we go. It's called Psychological Scotoma. S-C-O-T-O-M-A. Psychological scotoma. Psychological scotoma is an inability to observe certain phenomena or to recognize certain situations, though they are obvious to other persons. And excellent book. I'm not done reading it. But basically, something can be right in front of us, and we take it for granted. We don't recognize it. We don't acknowledge it for what it actually is or for what it was or will be. We just take it for granted. One of these examples, for example, right? Any mountain. You can look at any mountain and you can just call it a mountain. What is that? Oh, it's a mountain. What is a mountain? Where does a mountain come from? Now, let me separate our conditioning from our creative and rational and reasonable ability to think. Our conditioning tells us that, the world kind of just over millions and millions and billions of years, it just changed shape, and it's just moving, and there's plate tectonics, and they push up against one another to make mountains. That's that's a short form of what we have been taught. Our creative mind won't allow that concept to come to the forefront. I'm not saying that the earth doesn't move, but what I am saying is there are more believable options than plate tectonics and drifting land theory, and next thing you know, we have mountains. Have you ever seen like the Swiss Alps? Or here in Colorado, I have the Rockies right behind me every day. Or the Matterhorn. If you want a great example of how that theory is so unbelievable, just go look at the Matterhorn, which is a famous mountain. It goes like in a way that you can't imagine land pushing itself up in that formation. As a matter of fact, speaking of rock formations, there are millions of rock formations that are 100% not able to be explained by what we call modern science, or modern geology, or modern schooling, or indoctrination. Just look up strange rock patterns, strange mountain formations. They're everywhere. And this is what I was saying earlier. You have to have the mindset to see it. You have to open yourself up to the possibility. Now, am I saying? I know I'm using my hands a whole lot, so I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm just kidding. Am I saying that all of the mountains are dead Titan bodies? No, I'm not. Excuse me. But let's look at what they have left behind. They have left behind terraforming. Terra means earth, right? Terrestrial. Extraterrestrial. Terra means earth, all right? It means the ground that we walk on. And forming just means to shaping of. So the ancient Titans mostly are the ones who contributed to the shaping of our land, the terraforming of our world. They are the ones who had the size and ability to change the shape of the land around us, whether it be mountain ranges, volcanoes, lakes, oceans, ravines, canyons, especially canyons. Wow. So we have the terraforming. We have the actual physical structure of the land itself, how the land looks, And then just to add on top of that, we're going to build context for something that we understand as being attributed to the Titan race. We have the terraforming of our world. Look at the Mesas, right? Those of you who are, who watch my channel, you've probably seen the No Forests on Flat Earth video. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend checking it out. Basically, in a nutshell, it says that the mesas of the world, for the most part, look exactly like gigantic tree stumps. And modern geology, modern science cannot really adequately describe how we have the formation of a hill or mountain that all of a sudden becomes flat, perfectly level on the top. As a matter of fact, there will be mesa after mesa after mesa where they're all equally flat at the exact same elevation. What could have caused that? Well, science will tell us rain sprinkling of rain over millions of years, and then allow your imagination a breath of fresh air, right? Because they don't allow us to use our imagination except for when it comes to believing in the ridiculous stories that they tell us. They say, rain and wind and millions of years. Let your imagination fill in the blanks. No, I'm sorry. I will use my imagination. However, it makes more sense to me that they're flat on top because something cut it on top. Something removed the rest of it. Just like I see when I look at the ancient trees. Oh, and I did put I put the picture of Devil's Tower down there as an example. Interesting side note, if you watch one of the original Superman movies, when they zoom into Krypton, which I'll be talking about in other videos, Krypton looks exactly like this giant tree stump down here, okay? Like the way that its crystalline forms and structures just grow straight up out of the ground, that's what it looks like. So anyways, we have the terraforming of the world, we've got the Mesas, we also have religious texts, religious scriptures, the most sacred writings to ever land in mankind's lap. Now, I say religious because the world can relate to religion. The world can relate to how important religion is. Well, like I said, when speaking of the Titans and gigantic race of beings, breadcrumbs were left to us in all of the world's religious texts and scriptures and writings and legends and lore and stories. But every time our mainstream religion encounters it, because it's very hard to completely eradicate something that was so prevalent for so long in history, it's very hard to get rid of every single example where somebody annotated that or wrote about it or made note of it. So, some of these things have not been erased. Some of these things have been referenced and spoken of. But when our mainstream religious teachers come across it, they have been indoctrinated, subconsciously most of the time, I'm sure. This is just the way that it is. It's passed down from religious person to religious person. They have been taught to dismiss it or to come up for some other reasoning or meaning for the actual Titans having existed. They will say, oh, it's metaphorical, or, oh, no, it actually represents this other thing, or, no, they just thought that they were that big, but in reality, they just made them that big to show whatever, right? So, we have the terraforming of the world. We have the mesas, or tree stumps, left behind all over the world. And all of these religious texts of the world also do speak of the gigantic trees that reached into the heavens as well, right? We also have the religious texts. And then we have something that I have been using a lot lately that some people have dubbed comparative mythology. What is comparative mythology? Well, I call it putting the pieces together. I call it following the trail of breadcrumbs. When you can step outside of your race or your ethnicity or your nationality or your culture, and you can start, or your religion or your beliefs, when you can step outside of all of that and look at all of those things across the realm, and you can see the pieces that are all related. That sounds just like the story from over here. And that sounds just like this story from over here. And these subjects in the story relate to this one. And this one relates to that one. The next thing you know, you're putting together this gigantic puzzle of a beautiful picture that has been fractured and scattered over time for the truth seekers to find the pieces. And to come together and say, hey, I found this piece. Do you have a matching piece? I do have a matching piece. You know, maybe somebody doesn't have a matching piece. Maybe people are watching right now totally just thinking, you know, this guy's smoking drugs and he's psychotic and he's crazy and this is ridiculous and stupid. I've seen all those comments. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to those people who are on a similar walk, Those people who are on a like path or who are like-minded, at least for the time being. Maybe our paths cross just briefly. Maybe we have something in common for a moment. Or maybe we're on the same road together. Either way, I'm talking to the like-minded people. And hopefully, you'll learn some things from me, or you'll get something out of it, as I do from all of you. Okay, so let's move forward. I was thinking of something, and it just went away. But let's move forward. So we have the Titans were once fact. They were common knowledge. Everyone knew about them. And then something happened, and the Titans disappeared. And along with their physical disappearance came the disappearance of the memory of them. Collectively throughout this whole entire realm of the plane that we live on. Throughout history, really. They've been deleted from our history, as have so many other things. But we are here to find them, okay? There is the evidence for them, the evidence that they have left behind. And I'm going to come back to the evidence when I talk about mud fossil theory here in a bit. Then we have some examples. For example, you see King Kong over here on the side. And King Kong is a great example. I don't know if that was released on purpose or if the movie was made because some people are just connecting to the truth that is in the ether around us, because ultimately we're all connected. Ultimately, every single one of us is sharing the same thoughts. But look at this guy over here. This is Paul Bunyan. Now, for those of you who don't know who Paul Bunyan is, over here in America, he's what we call a tall tale. He's basically a fairy tale. Paul Bunyan is the story of a titan here in America. And he was seen as a hero in folklore in the 1800s and even the early 1900s. Paul Bunyan was a titan lumberjack who went around helping men, the babies that we call humans, chop down all of the trees. Let me repeat that. The titan called Paul Bunyan went around chopping down all of the trees. Let that sink in with everything we've discussed so far, okay? Now, if you've ever seen, the cartoon version of Paul Bunyan, imagine this. Imagine the trees are like this big, compared to a titan. If a titan has an axe, he can't just go around swinging. He's going to have to get all the way down to the trees in order to chop them down. Paul Bunyan doesn't need to chop down trees that are this big, okay? Paul Bunyan would chop down a tree that matters to Paul Bunyan. I'm talking about a giant tree. I'm talking about the trees that have grown up to what we call to be mesas today. I'm talking about life forms that we can only describe as being trees when they're really just maybe a form of silica age pillars. I think pillars are a better word. They were these pillars that just reached into the heavens. Now, just so happens that the class of the group that we call the Illuminati, they have various symbols in order to remind people, to remind one another of where they're from. They hearken back to certain things. And one of their symbols are the pillars, right? Especially pillars that reach into the heavens. Paul Bunyan was a titan that cut down these pillars that we call trees today. Another thing is you'll notice that he has this blue ox or this blue cow. Well, where did this cow come from? Interesting side note, if you have seen the movie Kong, I forgot what it was called. It's King Kong, the new King Kong movie. If you've seen the new King Kong movie, whatever it's called, there is also a giant cow or a giant water buffalo or whatever you want to call it who just happens to be in the movie with Kong. Nothing is accidental. All things are done for a purpose. Not on purpose, but for a purpose. They're done purposefully. They're done directly. Here's another one, Babe the Blue Ox. Now, Paul Bunyan and this ox are directly related to an ancient northern Nordic story, Scandinavian story of the frost giant named Ymir. And the frost giant Ymir was a titan. Not just a giant, he was a titan. He was a god of gods. He was a creator and terraformer of the worlds. The ancients actually credited Ymir, and also, interestingly enough, the death of Ymir as having created things like the mountains and the world around us and the oceans and other things like that. There are truths and breadcrumbs to be found in all of these stories. So Paul Bunyan is Ymir, the frost giant. And his ox, I don't know how to say the name of his ox, so I didn't even bother writing it down. I'm so sorry, but Ymir had what they call a primordial cow, okay? Basically, it was a titanic ox or cow, and Ymir basically, fed from it, and that's how he lived. He drank its milk. But if you notice, the cow or the ox that Paul Bunyan walks around with is blue. Why is it blue? Because it was born in this freezing cold atmosphere. Now, there are these titans that are known as frost giants. Why are they called the frost giants? Well, we've seen them passed down in a fantastic way in myth and in fiction. Many of you have probably seen the Marvel movies, especially the ones with Thor. Thor relates to the Asir, or the elven race, or the El, or the gods of old. Thor, Odin, Freya, Woden, Tyr, all of these ancient gods of Norse mythology, of Scandinavian mythology and folklore. Now, the elven or the Aelven race, the elves, they fought against the frost giants, aka the titans. Now, why are they called the frost giants? Well, it seems to me, especially in Norse mythology, that there are realms outside of this Middle Earth realm that we live in. And one of those realms is called Jotunheim, which means land or world of the giants. Titanic giants. The gods themselves, the elven race, they were already giant compared to us today. They were the large, 15, 20 feet tall beings. I'm talking about the frost giants were people like this guy over here. This is actually from a video game. I forgot what it's called. But anyways, from a video game, and it shows a concept of Kronos, one of the titans, one of the fathers of the gods. So anyways, we have the Titanic race battling against the Aelven race, or the Els, or the Al, or the Allah, or the Elohim, or whatever you would like to call them. I call them the elves because I believe that's what they are. That's why I have a little picture of a little elf dude down there next to the tree stump. But anyways, the elven race, the gods, fought against the Titanic race of beings. They warred amongst each other. Now, it wasn't always war. It wasn't just war, but that was one of the main features, that they warred against one another. And let's see, I'm just checking my notes here. I wrote a lot of stuff down. So we got King Kong, we've got Paul Bunyan, we've got Ymir and his ox, whatever its name was. And what are some other good examples? Oh, we've got the Cyclops. Now this is going to get really interesting because I kind of had a small revelation, something that I'll be working out in the future. But Cyclops, anytime you see the concept of a Cyclops, you'll see it's basically a titan with one eyeball, Now most people would think, if I asked you what does Cyclops mean, most people would say, oh, it means, one eyeball, because that's what we always see. But that's not what it means. Cyclops, if I write it down here, I don't know if you could see. Cycle. Can you see that? Nope, his shoulder's in the way. All right, cycle and then ops. Okay, so you've got two words here. You've got the word cycle. Now, you can think of lots of words that start with cycle. Unicycle, bicycle or bicycle, the cycle or circle of life. It means circular or round. That's what it means. It means round or circular. And then we have ops. Well, for you hardcore gamers that are watching my channel right now, you've clearly heard of black ops, right? Many of you would think that that's short for operations, which it is. But the word ops actually comes from things like telescopic, the optometrist, right? It means eye, ophthalmology. Optimism is when you're in the state of being able to see. You know, you're optimistic. It means eye. So cyclops or cyclops means circle eye, right? Which is really interesting because it only really refers to one eye, right? Or maybe the S is plural. I don't know. Maybe it means, you know, circle eyes. But it has been passed down to us as being the circular eye titan. And that's important. Why is that important? And why... Sorry, I have this really uncomfortable chair. So, like, I need to put a blanket down or something. Anyways, why is it important? It's important because the Cyclops means the circle eye. Why is that important, J-Dreamers? Get to the point. I'm trying to. It's just so awesome. I can't... Oh, here's a good example. There's a picture of one right there. The Cyclops, the circular eye titans, right? Well, this actually helps me to answer or to get more information about a question that I've been asking people for years and years. And maybe you've been asking people this too. Nobody has ever, not once, given me a good explanation of the question, why do Asian people have slanted eyes? Now, that is not, I'm not going into racism, I'm not making fun of anybody. It simply is the truth. Those around the Pacific Rim tend to have more slanted eyes or squinty eyes. I don't know what you would like to call it. I call it dragon eyes, and I will tell you why. There seems to be a difference in the DNA and how certain beings looked between the Titanic race or the Cyclops race, the Cyclops race, the circle eyes race, and the ones they warred against, which were the Elven race, or the Silica Elven gods, or the dragon race of gods, right? Those gods, like Thor and Odin, especially whenever you get into the Eastern concept of those gods, not only are they, not only are they gods, but they're always related to the dragons. And if you happen to be a ufologist or a fan of, ancient aliens or anything like that, you'll know that the reptilian race of aliens, or alien, right? The reptilians always are pretty much portrayed as having some sort of, kind of lizardy slanted eye look, right? So you have this race of beings, the elves, or the El, or the Elohim, or Al, or Allah, or whatever you'd like to call them, as being portrayed as the slanty sort of dragon race, right? Who are worshipped by those around the Pacific Rim, especially in places like China and Japan and that area. And then you have the Cyclops, the round eye race of the Titans, and they warred against one another. This might actually come into play later on when we get into creation myths and where did we come from and where did the human race begin. Not getting religious on people, okay? But just putting the breadcrumbs together. Anyway, so one connection I was sort of working on, this is really a lot of speculation, but it's in the sound. One of the titans that is mentioned in these religious scriptures is King Og, right? King Og. Now recently there have been, the lost book of King Og. I'm not sure what I think about that. Honestly, it's very pieced together. And I think that there's better information in books like the book of Joshua or the book of Jubilees and stuff like that. But anyways, King Og in the Bible was mentioned as being a giant. Now, people assume, based on some things that are talked about in the Bible, that he was about 15, 18, 16, 15 feet tall. But it doesn't actually say that that's how tall he was. However, there's a contemporary to the book of Genesis known as the book of Jasher or Yasher, which means the correct account. It's not a book of anybody's name. It's not like the book of Enoch, the person. No, the book of Jasher, or I forgot how to say it in Hebrew, but it's the book of Jasher or Yasher. It means the correct book or the correct account. The book of the correct account. And it's a contemporary of the book of Genesis, right? And the book of Enoch. In Joshua, it says that King Og was this titan who went up upon one of the tallest mountains and picked up a huge boulder to throw it down upon the entire camp of the Israelites, which would be like a giant climbing up on top of Pikes Peak on the Colorado Rockies, right behind where I live, and throwing it down and smashing all of Colorado Springs. That requires something like this guy in this picture over here, or that guy. Okay, it requires a titanic being, a being of mountainous skyscraper stature. So, anyways, Og, in my mind, sounds a whole lot like Occ. O-C-C. Occ. Right? Now, I'm working on the etymology of O-C-C. Okay? Well, you can't see it, sorry. But anyways, Occ sounds a lot like Og. And Occ, like ocular, as in oculus, as in to look, right? Or related to the eye, the Cyclops, right? They just sound very similar to me, and I think that there's something there. There's also a famous titan named Balor. Now, Balor is of Irish legend and lore. Balor, I find the story of Balor to be very interesting because Balor was a titan who actually locked up, I think it was his daughter, in what they call a crystal pillar or a crystal tower. Now, if I hear a crystal tower, I'm thinking of... I'm not going to write on there anymore because you can't see it. Sorry. Oh, I can write on this one. I'm thinking of these mesas from the Silica age, right? And when I say Silica age, perhaps I'll do a more in-depth video on that. But in short, when I reference the age of Silica or the Silica age, I'm talking about an age where perhaps, and it seems to indicate that instead of everything that's organic being based on carbon, like we are carbon-based beings, we are, in comparison, decrepit. We fall apart very quickly. We're not chemically as strong as a being that would be made of silica. And then if you don't know what silica is, just think of like crystal. You know what I mean? Just kind of think of crystal. Like Superman's home, the Fortress of Solitude, if you're a comic book nerd like me. A Silica age where everything was silica based. And the reason I say silica so much is because that happens to be the second most abundant substance on our planet next to like oxygen. I think oxygen is number 1, but silica is definitely number 2. My head itches, sorry. Anyways, so yeah, Balor, the Titan, locked his daughter up in this crystal tower, which is very interesting and reminds me of, you know, the silica trees that were once cut down by Paul Bunyan and his buddies. So let's move forward a little bit. So we have the round-eye Cyclops race of Titans fighting against the dragon gods of old, or the elven race, or however you'd like to call them. We have this war that waged between the two, right? If we use comparative mythology and we put together the similar pieces of the story, we find that the Titanic race could not sustain itself. Or, at the very least, it could not coexist with the smaller races due, in part and mostly, to their size. They began to eat everything. They began to consume everything. They began to destroy, or, depending on your views, reshape or reform or terraform everything. And somebody had decided there needed to come a stop. There needed to be an end to the Titans. They needed to be stopped because basically they were bullies. And that's why they're always portrayed as the bad guys. That's why they're always portrayed as these evil, stupid, dumb beings that just want to feed themselves. You know what I mean? There may be some truth to that. I'm not taking sides. I'm not saying that the Titans were all good or that they were all bad. What I am saying that using comparative mythology, we understand that the story was a war between the two factions and that the Titans needed to be disposed of. And so something happened to get rid of the Titans. Now, how big were the Titans? Let's talk about that real quick. These are great pictures. That's why I put them up here. Also want to give a shout out to Age of Disclosure. Just saw the new video. Very much on the same page. And yeah, go check out Age of Disclosure's new video. Excellent video. How big were the Titans? Well, there's not a lot of references as to actually measuring them out. You know, like I said, this was common knowledge thousands of years ago. People didn't need to say, oh, well, just so you know that these Titans are exactly this many feet tall. Plus, I'm sure they varied, right? From one to another. There were different sizes, I'm sure. Just like we're different sizes. However, in the book of Joshua, or in the book of Enoch, I'm sorry, a book that is quoted by many of those in various circles who are thinking outside of the box. Enoch says they were 3,000 ells tall. An ell, approximately, is about 18 inches at the least, from the tip of your finger to your elbow. Now, keep in mind, that's my tip of my finger to my elbow. I'm talking about, this is what men measured a long time ago when men were much bigger. Because I speculate and theorize and think that we have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller over time. So perhaps an ell is much bigger than this 18 inches is today. But if you multiply 18 inches by 3,000, you get, I believe it's 4,500 feet, which is very close to a mile. Beings who are a mile tall. That, you would think that if there was any truth to that would be slightly important to learn and to discuss and to talk about. That it would have an effect on us today. As it does with me, clearly, because I'm doing a whole video about it. But anyways, oh, the frost giants. By the way, I just wanted to mention this as a side note, right? The frost giants, I think that because they were silica based, maybe, I'm not saying they were, but if they were silica based, perhaps they were immune to the cold temperatures that we are not immune to, that we are susceptible to. Maybe it's because of our frail carbon-based bodies. Maybe it's because we're so much smaller. I don't know. But it seems that the frost giants had no problem with the cold. Maybe it's because of their chemical composition, their physical makeup. What else do we have? So how tall were they? They were the size of mountains. And because they were the size of mountains, they were able to do unbelievable feats. There are books like the Silmarillion. If you have ever heard of The Lord of the Rings, or if you ever heard of The Hobbit, popular movies that came from popular books, they were written by a man who also wrote a book, the prequel to all of that. He wrote about the prehistory of those events. He talks about these Titan beings having come down and how they actually helped to shape the world for the arrival of the elven race and for the arrival of the human race. And a great story called the Silmarillion. Lots of truth in it. Highly recommend it. What else do we have? Oh, I do want to mention the movie and the cartoon and the anime Attack on Titan. Because, you know, pop culture, right? While I think that there is truth in that, especially that in this show, or in the movie Attack on Titan, the humans build this gigantic wall, this barrier to keep out the Titans, which I think there's a whole lot of breadcrumbs right there for us to pick up and to follow. The way that they portray the Titans is, to me, directed at a desensitized audience. It's just shock value, you know? I don't think that the Titans may have really looked like, you know, people without skin and just muscle and tendons and fibers everywhere. I'm not so sure about that. I think that's just for shock value, or maybe to take away from the truth of it so that people see it as being ridiculous and not real. The concept is real. The concept has support across the world, in all of the world's writings, from the smartest people who have ever walked. Well, I don't know if they were the smartest, but from some of the most prolific and notable names of history who have left us their writings. But anyways, I digress. Let's talk about, where did they go? Where did the Titans go? They were once here. This was once common knowledge. Everybody knew about the Titans. They played a huge part on the war against the elven race, or the gods, the Els, the the Elohim, whatever you like to call them. They warred against one another. They were so important. They were so detrimental to whatever was happening that it was decided to kill all of them. To create a mass genocide of all of the Titanic beings, or as much as was possible. Something happened, and they all started to disappear. And not just the Titans having disappeared, but everything associated with those Titanic beings is now gone and forgotten. So, it seems to me that one of the most likely and most notable of the suspects of the things that could have gotten rid of all of the Titans is the flood. When I talk about the flood, I am talking about the deluge. I'm talking about the world, this plane of existence being covered and flooded with water. I can look at the map today. I can look at the world I live in today, and I can say, that's too much water. I know there shouldn't be that much water, right? Because I am a land being, and I see all of the land beings that exist. I think water is very important, and I think that there's a little bit more to water than we might realize, especially if there are waters above and waters below us. But nonetheless, all of these writings describe a great and powerful flood that washed away and drowned many of these Titanic beings. Now, it just so happens that all of the major water sources of the world are saline. They're salt water. And the saline acts funny around electricity. Now, my personal theory and my thoughts on the subject are, for more information, please go check out my video about the sons of prehistory. Okay? And I talk about this a lot. But also, I think my video Arcadian Sky, okay? I talk about how there were once more stars, more skylights in the heavens above us, right? For example, the planets. You could call them Jupiter, Mars, Venus, that these lights were much, much closer as we go back further in time. That maybe the light that we call the sun, or the offspring of whatever created it, maybe there was a time when even that wasn't around, or that it was altogether different. Or what we call the moon, which is its own light source. There were all of these different orbs, or maybe they're not orbs, I don't know what they are, but they were light sources in the sky. And they had different effects on the beings underneath them that we call astrology today. Perhaps those were used as a weapon, like you see in this picture here of the giant and the sun around him, right? I think that maybe the sun was a weapon. Maybe the moon was a weapon. Maybe there were other titanic weapons that in combination with the flood turned the Titans to stone. They solidified them. And we see the remains of these Titans And the Titanic era that once existed, the Silica age, it's all been turned into rock, or what we call rock today. Today we take rocks for granted. We just say, oh, it's a boulder. Oh, it's a mountain. Oh, it's a rock. No, I think it's much more than that. I think it hails from something else. I think things were petrified. Things turned into rocks. And like I mentioned in many of my other videos, we have the legends passed down to us that the trolls turned into stone. That many of these giants, if you see the pictures of all of these giants, many of the titans are portrayed as being made of rock. Why is this? It seems to me that there are some breadcrumbs to follow. That the titans themselves were solidified. They were turned into pillars of stone like that. That they froze instantaneously in a petrified state, densified, hardened, turned into statues, basically. Many of them fell. Many of them, maybe they were sleeping, maybe they were standing, maybe they were fighting, maybe they had their own forms of machines or technology or whatever, and it was all destroyed in a moment, in a cataclysm that befell this realm. And I think it's highly possible that they turned into stone, and we see their remnants all around us. But like I said, it's one of those instances where we can have it in front of us, but we don't recognize it, right? Psychological scotoma. It's something that's in front of us, but we can't see it. It's like it's been deleted as it hits our mind. It's deleted from our memory instantaneously so that we can see it, but instantly forget it. The moment we turn around and look at something else, we forgot that it was even there. It's like it never existed to us. And this has also been portrayed, this concept of forgetting something the moment you see it. It's been portrayed in books like The Wizard's First Rule. If you've ever read The Wizard's First Rule, there's a spell of magic called the Chainfire spell. And the Chainfire spell causes everyone in the world to forget the subject, which actually gets out of control, and they end up forgetting all kinds of stuff because the subject is related to other subjects, and they end up forgetting all kinds of things, even if it's right in front of them. It's also portrayed in Doctor Who as well, but that's a whole different story. Anyways, this concept of the Silica age and the age of the Titans having turned into stone, densified, petrified, solidified, and there remains all around us in the forms of mountains, the giants laying down and causing the islands like you see in the movie Moana. You can see the strange rock formations all around the world can be explained, at least in part, by mud fossil theory. It's the theory that these titans fell and their bodies turned into fossils and mud. Which is very interesting because if they turned into mud or a form of clay, right? Because it doesn't always mean they have to be rock and that's it. But there's different kinds of rock, aren't there? Different forms of rock, different colors of rock that come from different things that turned into rock. One of those forms of rock is what we call clay. Now, I find it interesting, and this is going to be speculation on my part, putting a few distant pieces together, and hopefully I can find more closely related pieces, but I find it to be very interesting that we have the Cyclops, the Cyclops Titanic race, right? That died, turned into stone, or left behind clay remnants. And then we have this story of these babies called the human race that are made a little bit softer, if you want to call it that. That they're made out of clay. That's what the stories say, that you and I are basically golems, or a form of golem. A golem is a creature that's formed out of clay and then it's animated. They give it life. And that's basically, you know, what the Bible says. It says that we were made out of clay and then given life. That's a golem, okay? Now, what clay? That's the real question. There are various forms of clay. One of them is called kaolin clay. Kaolin clay comes in basically four main colors. White, right? Brown, like the Mexican race or the Pacific Islander race. Black, as you see from those who hail from regions like Africa. And yellow, or yellowish, okay? Those 4 colors of clay seem to represent and coincide with the 4 main colors of what we call the human race today. They say that we come from clay. The giants or the titans of old may have fallen and turned into stone and clay. What if, because think about this, how can you create a being without DNA, you can, but you have to construct the DNA. What if you already had the DNA available, but you just manipulate it? So, let's say that the elven race, or the El, or the Elohim, or the gods of old, won the war against the Titans. And the Elohim wanted to create for themselves a race of beings called the human race. Now, some of this I'm actually putting together on my own. Some obviously comes from religious texts and important scriptures from across history. Some comes right from the Silmarillion that I was talking about earlier. The elves want to create their own race of beings. Well, how much easier could it be than to see that there are pieces of DNA all over the place to use? And you can actually make them, you can make your own golem, your own creature, your own what we call human, in the form of the ancient Titans. What if, right? What if that's why some of us have cyclops or round eyes, circular eyes, and some of us don't? Maybe some of us are more closely related to this class, and some of us are more closely related to this class. Maybe there's a mixture between the two somewhere in there. I'm sure we lived in a mixture world right now, but at least for me personally, this helps to really explain a lot of those questions that I've had about what we call race and our origins and the beginnings of humanity and who it is that came before us, what the world was like in our early stages or in their early stages. But regardless, the Titans disappeared. The Titans are no more. They've been gone for a very long time. We did have stories of them making an appearance here and there, but in far less numbers. Now, the Titans have been gone for so long due to this cataclysm that we have forgotten them. And I don't think it helps that, people like what we call the Illuminati have come by and stolen our writings or burned our writings or hidden our actual history to take away our identity and to steal from us who we are, our birthrights, our history, where we come from, and how we got here and where we're going, what we're capable of, our potential. The Titans are gone, or at least they're gone for now. The Titans that were once here were eradicated. But like I said in the beginning of this live stream, there are other realms where the frost giants live. Jotunheim. There are other places where the Titans may still walk freely today. Now keep in mind, it's not like they've been dying off as we do. We live for a very short amount of time. The Titans were the gods of the gods. Now, these race of beings were known to live for 1,000 years or more. How much longer would this race of beings live? Who were the fathers of these? It's not a big deal for them to live for 7,000 years. That is like living for 1 week in their minds. Time is much different the bigger you are or the smaller you are. Right? Time for a fly on the wall goes by much quicker compared to the Titan doing the live stream. Okay? Nonetheless, the Titans are gone. We've forgotten them. We've actually encouraged people not to talk about them for the fear of being ridiculed. But here's the thing. In all of the world records, in all of the comparative mythology, in all the stories and legend, and the fairy tales, or the fairy tales, the tales of the fairies or the elves, the tales, the stories of the gods that have been passed down purposefully with intention, so that we would remember them as we die and die and die and die. With our short lifespans, we would pass down the information through stories that we now call myths. Truth in story form, right? All of these records indicate that the war is not over between this race of beings and this race of beings. That there would come a time after a time of peace or rest where they would be reintroduced to one another, when the walls that hold back the Titans would be let down, where the boundaries would open up, and the Titans would be released. And there would be what is known as Ragnarok. Ragnarok, the war between the gods. The war between the titanic beings and the godlike beings, the powerful elven race. And this war would come at the end times. Well, I feel like that's something that could be close. I'm gonna do an entire end times video, so I'm not gonna get into that. Plus, it's not very popular. You know, some people don't want to hear about it because they don't like to think about apocalypse. They don't like to think about the world changing all around them. People like to remain stagnant and status quo and go along with what they know and what they're comfortable with. But not me. No, I'm all for chaos because it brings about growth. It brings about change. You know, I can just hear somebody going, Illuminati confirmed, order out of chaos. Oh, yes, absolutely. There is truth to that. But I do Illuminati videos all the time. This is not one of them, okay? So I'm not going to get into that path. But my point is, the Titans left, and it is prophesied and predicted, especially if one just simply understands the law of cycles. They will return, right? The pendulum will swing back the other way, and we will re-experience all of time in reverse, going back until we're taken into a paradise-like beginning, where all things are made new. All of the horrible stuff that happened when the pendulum came to its rock bottom, those things will all lead to growth and a new civilization, a new world, a new life. If you've ever seen the Shannara Chronicles, that's a great TV show that gives an example of what it's going to be like and what it once was like, right? Cataclysm happens. It happens in cycles, right? And the elven race reemerges in the Shannara Chronicles, and they fight against these giants. And the humans who survive, you know, they don't even know. They walk past the car, and they're like, what do you think that was? I don't know. And they create their own myths and legends about things that once existed in the world we live in today. That's why I believe talking about these things is so important and detrimental. It gives us focus on where we're going. Where are we headed? Because so many of us don't even know. We don't know where we're going. We're just looking at the ground. We're just comfortable where we are. We're walking around with no purpose, no drive. We're not preparing for anything in the future. So, I believe that this is important information. I have presented to you the story of the Titans, the reality, the Vaeri, the Erion tale, the elven tale of the Titans, the story that is myth, which is truth presented in story form, passed down by ourselves, generation after generation after generation. And I absolutely believe that the time has now come that we call the awakening, where our connection with one another is getting stronger and stronger, and our subconscious is beginning to spill over into our conscious mind, and we are starting to what we call wake up. We're starting to see things that were right in front of us the whole time that we never saw before. We're starting to realize. Now, that being said, I'm going to take a quick 1-minute break. I'll be right back, and I'm going to jump into the chat and answer any questions people have for the last 2 to 5 minutes. I'll be right back. Thanks. You know what? I totally forgot my intro. So now that I'm kind of done with the whole live stream, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank especially my supporters, the people who have signed up on Patreon to support me. You guys have helped out so that I can get new software and pretty much everything that I have for my channel. I want to show you the latest edition. This is the microphone that I just got. I'm very proud of this. It's an actual microphone. I'm still using it. I'm not sure how it works exactly, but it's not my computer. It's not my laptop microphone. And hopefully, we get some good audio quality sound out of it, because I really want people to hear me clearly whenever I'm speaking. So thank you to all of you who have donated over the months, everybody who ever has. We were able to get the P900, which I'm still experimenting with, and I'm also open to ideas with that, because honestly, I'm not too sure what I can do with it aside from zooming in on chemtrail planes and zooming out a long distance. But anyways, we have a few things, and they're things that I'm implementing on this channel. And I also have this awesome introduction. I paid some people to make, a little logo and a little introduction, and I'm not sure if I can screen share right now. I don't want to waste time. I don't know how to do it, but anybody that subscribes, you'll see a special little message underneath me. It's basically like somebody pushing somebody's soul out, which is pretty cool. In things like the super chat or whatever, I'm experimenting, trying to make a cool live stream. You know how the gamers all have it? Like, they have cool stuff to check out. While I love to present my information, I also want it to be fun. I want the information I present to not be focused on the left brain only, but I want our right brains to open up so that we can allow our creativity to balance the information that I present. And I'm working on that on this channel, and I hope you guys like it. Anyways, so thank you to everybody. And I'm going to jump into the chat. Let me see who we've got here. I don't even know how many people are watching right now, but let me see who's in the chat at least. All right, looks like we have Anna G, Brendan Morgan, FEMA inmate, Ezekiel Marquez, Jay Analyze, myself, Jess Sinclair. Hey, what's up, Jess? Johanna Hanna, Lootable Corpse, Miss Daldy, Sacred J, Who Dat Guy J, and your pal Parsifal. What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for watching. Let me go back to the chat here. If you have any questions for me, please type in my name, J Dreamers. That way it'll actually highlight it, and I'll be able to, I can separate your question from the regular chat. And we'll stay on for about 5 more minutes. FEMA inmate says, J Dreamers, where do Neanderthals fit into this theory? Great question. For more information on Neanderthals and where do they fit into this theory, I would check out the Emerald Tablets. Thoth. Thoth actually talks about the uncivilized race of beings that once was here. And I don't want to get into it too much, but this actually could be short for Thoth or Tot-on. The Tot-on, those of Tot, or Thoth, or thought, right? Anyways, Jess Sinclair says, J Dreamers, how's the backhand? For those of you who don't know, Jess Sinclair is an avid tennis player. And one of these days I will go out and we will have a little tennis match just for fun. Backhand's great. Thanks, Jess. Ezekiel Marquez says, it's 7:45 in the morning at my house, and I love your video, Jay. Well, thanks, Ezekiel. I'm super stoked that, people find information that I present worth listening to and worth considering. And I'm not the type of person that would ever say I'm absolutely right. And, you know, all of these ideas and speculation and theory are 100% true. And I admit that much of it is speculation and theory. But those words have a bad rap these days, don't they? By all means, let's speculate. Let's theorize. Let's throw things together. Let's put puzzle pieces together. Let's figure it out, you know? Let's come up with the truth for ourselves. If they want to hide it from us and they want to keep it from us, let's come together because there's so much more of us and we're already starting to connect. We can figure this out. FEMA inmate says, J-Dreamers, what is the significance of the knowledge tree in Adam and Eve? That's a great question. And honestly, I'm not like on that right now. I don't know. But it is a tree. And it is interesting because the esoteric books that speak about Adam and Eve talk about them as being gigantic. Maybe not titanic, but gigantic, right? Much bigger than we are today. J-Analyze says, can you please read my question? Just scroll up a bit. All right, I could do that. Oh, quick question for you. Do you think there could be remnants of these titans deep down into the sea? I heard there is mountain-like structures under the sea and would love to hear your thoughts. Absolutely, I do. I think that there's all kinds of stuff to be found at the bottoms of our oceans, but there's equally a lot of stuff here on top of the land. But like I said, I think that the deluge and the floods were introduced to drown out and to destroy many of these things. And because I also think that they were petrified, that maybe the electrocution from the thunderbolts of the gods, which were the skylight weapons, the sun weapons that once existed at the time, they shot down these thunderbolts, which created our craters that we have on our world today and the craters that you can see on the moon. For more information on that, please check out Arcadian Sky, my other video. But yeah, I think to answer your question, there's a lot of evidence in the ocean of things like this, the mud fossils that I was talking about. Oh, let me go back down. Brandon Morgan. Oh, Candy Jones says, I follow you because of ODD. She's saying, I follow you, meaning I subscribe, I watch your stuff. I don't have followers. I do not want to be, you know, anybody's messiah or somebody that is, you know, on a pedestal or anything. I'm just a person, just like you. But I'm not just a person, and neither are you. You're not just anything. You're much more important than the world would have you believe. Brandon Morgan says, J-Dreamers, do you think the firmament is an electromagnetic field that is blocking the other realms and someday it could possibly fall? In short, yes, I do. I'm probably missing way more questions. I'm so sorry. Let's see. J-Dreamers, do you think the Titans could have built the wall to keep us in, or what do you think its purpose is? I think it's possible it's not even there. I think there's a boundary. To me, it's very evident. There's some sort of boundary. I don't know what it's made out of. I don't know why, but boundaries are made to keep out and to keep inside, to keep one on one side and one on another. I absolutely think there's enough evidence to support some sort of a boundary, and there's enough evidence to support that one day that boundary will come tumbling down. All right, I think I caught up. Johanna Hanna says Mud Fossil University, also a good one to check out about mud fossils. And Sacred J says, J-Dreamers, hey man, LOL, all joking aside, if the stuff hits the fan happens, hit me up and I'll join you on the way to the north. Okay, well, I mean, if the stuff hits the fan, honestly, I'm not sure we'll even be with technology anymore. So that's why I really hope that people start looking more into things like doomsday preparations and being prepared. You know, having simple things around the house, like things that can light fires and sharp objects and things to protect yourself and things to keep you warm and the ability to make food and know where to find, you know, clean water. I think those are very important things for when stuff like that happens. And I believe that some people are actually placed in particular zones, in areas around the plane of existence for a purpose. And that purpose is that these are safe areas. Now, I totally think that Colorado, where I am in this particular area, is one of them. I feel that very strongly, not because I want to survive or anything, but just, it's one of those things that you know deep down, you know? It's one of those things you can't explain, but you just know it, and you have always known it. Oh, FEMA inmate says, do our modern weapons and armies stand a chance against the Titans? No, they don't. You can, I mean, it's just like the simplicity of it. A Titan is massive. A Titan's skin is not like as thin, as paper thin as our skin is, okay? Titans can resist bullets and, you know, our tiny little cutting devices, even tanks and missiles and things like that. It would be like you getting stung by a bee. I mean, yeah, it might irritate, it might cause pain, but it's not going to kill you. So you have to come together in order to learn how to take down an opponent that's that big. And honestly, I'm not sure if we should. Like I said, I'm not taking sides. Okay, I'm not against the Titans. I'm not against the Elven race. I'm sort of watching and weighing it out, because I'm not going to prejudge an entire race of beings, an entire existence of beings based on folklore and story and conditioning that's been passed on to me. No, I'm going to use my reasoning, and I'm going to judge accordingly from my own experience, and I'll go from there. All right, so I think that's good. I wasn't able to show my new intro, but if you want to check it out, it's actually on my channel. Like, you know, if you're a newcomer, you'll see. You know, I paid somebody to basically make a cool little logo and a little introduction, and I like it. So check it out when you have time. Also, go check out ODD's channel. That's ODD Reality. He's actually going to be helping me out to, you know, make my live stream overlay, you know, look a little bit more organized and whatnot. So props to ODD for helping me out. And props also, and a shout out to, I want to shout out to a couple of special people. Candy Jones says, your input on Project Bluebeam. I'm sorry, Candy, that's something I'm going to have to talk about another time. But I do think it's very much related. Sorry, one moment, I need to pull up some important information here, because there's a couple people I want to shout out, because I promised I would. It's just going to take me a second, and then we're going to wrap things up. All right, let's see. Go to my home. And I'm so sorry. I should have been way more prepared. I just can't remember their names off the top of my head. And I'm going to start doing this. Anybody that is anybody who's jumped onto Patreon to support my channel, I will absolutely be giving shout outs to those people, along with other people who deserve special recognition as well. All of you are special. Every single one of you is awesome, and I recognize all of you for adding to the world that we live in and doing your part in order to spread the truth. Part of it is listening, and we share with one another. We develop ideas for one another, and I just want to thank all of you for that. And I think this video right here has the information. I'm also going to put special shout outs in the About section of this video and future videos as well. And I'm also going to be filling out my About section in detail. I actually have an entire section there on books that I recommend, books that I have read and that I recommend, where I get a lot of this information from. Okay, so I found my list here. Thanks for bearing with me. Some channels I recommend you check out. ODD, like I said, That Is Impossible. It's a channel called That Is Impossible. Age of Disclosure, Nicholson 1968. Russian Vids, of course. I don't know if he's still around, but... And The Scariest Movie Ever is actually pretty good from time to time. And I want to give special thanks to Edward and Harmony D, who actually made it possible for me to get this lovely, beautiful microphone that we've all been using and listening to tonight. So thank you, Edward and Harmony D. And also a special shout out to my daughter Darian and to my son Jace, if you guys are watching or when you do watch. Anyways, this has been J Dreamers. I really love these hangouts. I think they're getting better. Thanks for joining me and watching the live stream. Thank you for everyone that asked the questions. And I highly encourage everyone to spread all of this information. And, you know, let's not hold ourselves back by feeling embarrassed or timid to talk about these type of subjects, because I think these are really just the verge of what we're getting into now. I mean, there's so many things that are coming to light lately that I'm honored and I'm happy to live in the time that I do, when only a couple of years ago I hated living in this time. I didn't see any reason for why I was even here. And now all of a sudden there's a lot of purpose and a lot of excitement that's coming with this. So I'm going to take off. Thanks everybody. Let me know if you like the setup, you know, how it looks, the sound, the audio. If you have any suggestions, if you want to leave me links with pictures or videos or examples of the things that I've talked about, go ahead and send me an email to jdreamers@protonmail.com. If you do, please put a short description in the subject, because people are writing me very lengthy emails and it's very time consuming. So please, out of respect, just keep it short and direct and to the point. I love you all. I appreciate you too. Thank you so much for all the support, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night and happy Halloween.